which is kind of booming in the school and the pre-board areas, they could well target in a large scale into this scope for the industry freshers. That's how I see this whole pandemic effect and the opportunities that are arising from that.
Yeah, in fact, this could
Okay,
open
so
up avenues. Yeah, in fact,
please
this
go
could
ahead.
open up avenues for people or students who have been from the far-fetched areas around the country, where companies never wanted to invest, or just because they didn't have any offices or local presence there, they were not getting offered. With this, there could be possibility that students from those areas are getting hired, and they're still working remote. So this could be a lot of this could mean a lot of changes. This could mean a lot of opportunities getting opened up, then being closed. And then investing in freshers or investing in the fresh talent is strategic investments, which would continue. It might slow down a little, but yeah, it still would continue.
We see Muralidhar
So
also
that's
joined.
a great relief. Yes, Mr. Muralidhar has joined us. So that's a great relief to all the new graduates that their job offers are not being taken away, and yes. So
I'll
do
tell
you think that
I'll brief something on the same lines what Panni and Hemant said.
sure.
Let's start from the basics part of it. Why are you important? The most important thing is why are you important and why you should not be worried about it. Being in India and being an engineering graduate or an MBA graduate, why you are important to an IT organization or any domain organization, why you're important. In a calendar year, we have around 16 lakh engineers and MBAs being graduated of all the companies, and out of which around 20% are management graduates and all. And when we look from a hiring potential point of view in the IT sector, compared to the domain sector, we talk about your telecom or finance or your retail or others. When we talk about an IT technology space point of view, it takes them around 70 to 75% of job opportunities out of the 16 lakh part. Why are you important for that matter? Every company, when they have a kind of a recruitment part of it, they have to serve a business model. A business model is something that it's a cost to a contract, cost to a business, cost to a part of it. When we take graduate hires, they are in the lowest level from a cost model. And then they come with a higher agility and higher skill factor of shaping up the industry or IT service point of view. So when we look into a pyramid, if you take any industry, any part of it, everything is a pyramid. If you take an example of a kingdom, king is one, but you will have many people who will be the military or the ground people who will be there. Same thing in an IT organization, you will have, let's say if I got a contract from Nokia or Dell from my colleagues, let's say there is a pool of around 500 people. There'll be one partner or others. When we look into a 5-scale region, so you'll have one partner, one delivery executive, 20 delivery managers, then we have technical architects and architects. The bottom level people are the graduate hires. This graduate hire is the one which makes or breaks the ice of a contract. At any point of time, the cost of business is depending on this particular pyramid part. So if I assume that there are 40% of graduate hiring required from an IT part, it differs from different technologies or different business model. For example, Pony's case might have a same pyramid, but less of graduate hire because they're working on a niche market. You need a specialized skill, so your potential percentage will be lesser in the bottom graduate hires, but you still have an experienced hire taking the majority load. So it depends upon the way we handle our IT part of it. So the graduate hire from a percentage point of view in the entire India region for this 16 lakhs part, the job opportunities are still there. That's the positive part. The timing of these resources to get into a job market from a May point of view or a July or August, that's a concern that this organizations have got. And this is not because of the COVID part of it. This is all because of the way the organization sees from a different way of working. The way they see is HR has to have some physical interactions with these people once they are onboarded to give some trainings and everything before they are deployed. So the offer letter giving a start date from this is not a concern for this IT organization. The cost to absorb these people from that point is not a concern. The cost is not a problem. With, let's say, July 1st or August 1st is not a concern. But they have some duties and responsibilities based on the compliance and kind of a various other things, accords, where these people, once they are onboarded, they need to be doing it. So that's the positive part of it. The challenge which I see is when you look into your graduate hiring pooling, in the current situation, there are sectors and countries. There are sectors and countries who are deeply impacted by this particular COVID. The business model coming from Europe and US are the ones which trigger the new businesses, and they are kind of in a very weak employment part of it. They lost everything. So the intake from this part is a challenge. So not looking into those items, the bigger concern which I see is the potentiality of the people, of the 16 lakh people, where they were planned to go to on-site or for other graduate colleges or other things, are going to either shrink from an on-site population, and some of them will grow into, let's say, around 2 lakh employees were going in a further education. This 2 lakh population might increase to 3 lakh or 4 lakhs. Already there are some universities across the globe, they have taken their intake from 12,000 to 25,000 because they know that it's a good market right now. So I think from a job hiring point of view, you are in a kind of a okay part, constraining the internal constraints of a 16 lakh people who have already applied and already got a job, they are secure. But if they have to go for either a college or a job market, that's where we have to make a shift of those kind of.
But then we have been seeing in news that most of the companies are withdrawing their offers from the students. So it may be due to the shift in economy that they cannot afford to pay for the new graduates or something. Why is that?
Yeah, this is there because some of those logistic, let's say take some companies like e-commerce or restaurants or food chain or retail business. Past 2 months of this lockdown, their revenue in the entire business model is zero. There is no business, or there is no revenue coming out of this particular thing. So if they have to sustain their market with their existing part, it's there. What they're doing is now is a market correction. So what we mean by market correction is to see the people with their skills and capability and map to the requirements of what it comes from the future state of model, target operating model. That's what they say. And then you don't know the new requirements or new required part, so which is currently on hold. That's okay right now because you don't expect much of it. So what they're trying to do now is a kind of a market correction within their organization with their established resources, and they're trying to change because they cannot adopt to the business model with this lockdown, and their revenues cannot continue, and they know that for the coming 2 months the revenues in this particular part, even after the lockdown 2.0 with some relaxation, will still have that revenue almost like a bleak. The share price has gone down and everything. So for them, it's like a market correction right now. So it's not that graduate hires are impacting their part. There will be a time during this part where this part will increase sharply, maybe somewhere around June, July, and this potential requirement where they have missed out those kind of market correction with some people moving out because of that will attract new graduate hires filling up the positions. So there's a possibility of this market correction bringing new talent into the organization with a fresh face and fresh peace of mind with new experience and everything in these areas of digital, e-commerce, aviation or travel and transportation or any such industry which has been deeply impacted by this, except like your pharmaceutical or kind of a banking or other part.
So that's interesting. My next question is to Mr. Muralidhar. What will be some of the long-term changes in workplace due to this pandemic? I think Mr. Muralidhar is not.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hi,
Yes.
everyone.
Hello, sir. Hello. Can you please turn on your webcam? Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Can you please repeat the question? Sorry, there was a little bit of a lag on my side. There is some network issue here.
So what will be some of the long-term changes in workplace practices due to this pandemic?
Okay. So yeah, I think as you all have noticed already, a lot of people are working from home.
Yes.
And I think that will be a new normal, I would say, going forward, even beyond the COVID scenario, right? A lot of people would like to maintain that, social distancing maybe for a while. I think this will definitely accelerate, I would say broadly three things, right? I mean, of course, one is the work practices and more remote working and, how you can be productive while you're working remotely, and how you can be engaged with your company or with respect to your management and leadership. So one thing we can see is a lot of communication that happens top down and bottom up uh, will become very critical. And I think it'll become, to some extent, there will be some kind of over communication that needs to happen, right? To make sure that there is a constant engagement in terms of, not just in terms of the productivity, but also the moral and the emotional, well-being, right? So definitely we would like, I mean, essentially we would see that a digital lifestyle, and I can touch here broadly about three elements. One is the education, entertainment, and the fitness, and how you can make sure that the constant online learning can happen. As you have noticed already, Harvard has opened up a lot of courses online, engineering courses. Most of them are offered online for free. And as you already saw, all the entertainment, be it Netflix, Amazon, they're all opening up. And at the same time, we see, the web conferences like Cisco WebEx or Zoom, all these guys, Hangouts, they're also opening up. So that I think this kind of will be the new normal, I would say, not just during this time, but beyond that. And there will be, interestingly, we got a lot of requests on the remote internships. So even not just in terms of the employees, but also the temporary hires, especially on the interns. People are reaching out even for a lowest stipend, or trying to make sure that they are engaged in the summer that is coming up.
Okay, so talking about the remote internship, how challenging is it to train the new graduates remotely? Is the efficiency changing? Like, is it increasing or decreasing? How well do you think the students can understand the things and grasp things quickly?
Yeah. So I would probably take this as two different things. One is like there is definitely the software focused, especially the people who are inclined on the computer science software. They will, I mean, on artificial intelligence, all these areas, right? There will be increase in the efficiency, because there is no real boundary whether they have to be physically present all the time. Just that they may lose some kind of physical interaction with the mentors and the leaders. But given that that gap is, kind of, the wall is kind of almost gone now with this online meeting conferences that are available. So I don't think that seems, and people are adopting a lot of tools like, Slack or even WhatsApp to communicate. So I don't see a drop in efficiency. In fact, I'm seeing an increasing in the efficiency, because people are more flexible. But at the same time, I see a drop in efficiency with respect to hardware work, especially somebody who need access to the labs. There is a drop in efficiency there, especially with embedded systems and the hardware side.
We can add on
to
from our experiences of what we are actually, where we are training students. Okay, not really in terms of the internship. Even right from the 5th semester, we engage with the university students, and it's almost like 80-20. There is only 20% or even lesser element of physical interactions. Of course, we start it with usually a face-to-face meeting, but then we have multiple models. We do guest lectures in terms of a suite of topics for the communication industry, and then we also have elective courses, curricular courses offered by the professionals for the latest technologies like 5G or IoT or machine learnings and so on, where majority of them is remote. Our current course running was for PES University, and right in the beginning, or let's say the first 30% of the classes are done, and then the pandemic affected. But we still went on to finish the course, and there are also projects, and all of them are managed entered remotely. So there are various ways of integrating with some good planning. Some part of it, especially in IoT machine learning, also people will be able to do if we can plan the kids upfront and so on. So there should be good opportunity and also good share of remote internship working out well for the companies. So that should really work. I don't see a reason why that should really get affected. Of course, I think the confidence, thanks to pandemic, now we have better confidence in the remote.
Yes.
And being a social, we always were highly relying on this physical interactions and face-to-face meetings. But I think we will now shift gear because we have got good experience and we now have the confidence of doing it better.
Yeah.
And
Adding
even
to
when
what Ponni and Murli has said, yeah. Adding to what Ponni and Murli has said, imagine a situation where we're talking about, we are kind of a situation where we're saying the lockdown in another 2 months' time. Imagine a scenario where it's the worst possible that this lockdown continues for 1 year. So industries from a strategic point of view has already taken this particular part. If you have heard about something called as virtual 360, some companies have adopted to a kind of a virtual onboarding of a resource from a graduate hire, if in case I talk about some of them, with a virtual platform with a 360D, with an automated bot, which actually guides you with that, which means there is no requirement for an HR or other things who are required to be in person to you to talk about as a mentorship. So IBM has got some softwares where we have got a virtual 360 degree, and we are now in a place where we talk about as no touch resource hiring, no touch hiring. So because of this COVID, these new words have come up, and this is now shaping up. The way it is working is the timing part of one thing is one part. We are waiting for the government or the overall pandemic to be settled. Yeah, there is a cure and there is a medicine, or the lockdown completes in another 2 months. That's a decision point from an enterprise point of view for the enterprise to take it to the next level. These softwares are available for people to start deploying and doing it, and it will be available for everybody in the course of part of it. The way the softwares are going to help is, this will actually help not to have any resource bound on a dependency with an organization to be trained on something. Imagine that you go to you see an app called Car Deco or something. Without going to a showroom, you're able to see everything of the car. Same thing will happen with an automated bot or something where you'll be given a virtual tour of your specific requirement which has been had for your potential. You will be given that expertise with software, sandbox, and other things for you to learn in a period of 4 weeks. And the best part, that chat automatic bot will envisage you on your learning path. It will give you your actions on a weekly basis. It will track your actions with your positive trademarks and everything, which means a manual assessment which was expected to be done by a manager sometime back in a 4 weeks or 6 weeks is now done by a robot. And then that becomes a more robust way of performing a group of people of around 20,000 people who are being hired for a common pool of a specific things. So the timing is a concern, but the softwares are available and people are looking into this kind of dimension because this might change the futuristic way the India resourcing and onboarding happens. This resourcing and staffing is already there in many companies like your automobile companies and various other things in the abroad, in Europe, which are in developed countries. But India has never been there because of various flaws in the process of onboarding. I think with this process, the automation will kick off more beneficial results, and the graduate hires will be the first to benefit out of this particular program.
Yeah, just to add to that, what Venu said, that's currently in practice in most of the organizations. In fact, just to give you some examples, even before you join, 15 days before you join, there will be a laptop shipped to you with all the softwares installed. So you don't even have to come to office to collect your laptops to that level. And then, as what Venu said, there are softwares which are going to assist you through all the journey when you're getting onboarded. But at the same time, there are softwares which are being installed, which are particularly focused around the well-being of an individual who's joining, because those are the times where there's a lot of instability, there could be stressful situations, and that software is actually going to assess the mental state of an individual who's onboarding, so that the HR knows that, yeah, the person is being taken care from all the processes point of view, but also his well-being is well thought through, and there's no instances that his well-being is taken at stake. So that's a level of no touch or focused around people who are joining, and that's particularly focused around millennials. So that's one thing that is been happening. Coming back to the workforce practices, I think more than the companies coming up with something, it's now needed that the governments, the local and the central governments, think about situations where they could influence, and there is a lot that they could do in terms of, so this entire ecosystem of people working from offices, and specifically around the organized sector, which is IT and IT enabled sector. It need not be this way. What is happening is there's overcrowding into metros. If that is relaxed, and then the government says that, okay, if a resource can work from a remote location, you should be forcing that to happen. I think a lot of problems would come to an end. There'll be the urban rural divide would go away. The gender divide would go away because there are many women employees, and this is from proper reports where it was proposed that if the distance is one of the factor where many women employees drop out after a particular point in time. If remote options are given, I think there's no need, no reason why we would see the gender divide, and we'll have women employees continuing with their jobs. So I think more than the workflows practice is changing, I think the government should also put in some and then drive it top down so that it is much better. And then it is particularly needed for the unorganized sector where people do not have proper labor laws being practiced. I am seeing some Swiggy messages where they say, okay, we are hiring for delivery boys. The messages that used to come in the last year to now, okay, you could see that they are announcing perks, they are announcing medical insurances, they are announcing gratuities, which is a positive change, and that has resulted because of this COVID thing. And that would shift for not just this but also the unorganized sector, which again the government has to be hand in glove with doing all of these.
So that's interesting, and it's a positive thing that yes, most of IT companies are being stable. But what about the startups in this crisis? How is the shift in economy, and how are they being affected due to this
So in
pandemic?
the Indian context, if you're
You mean
talking about
to?
this, sorry, the startups were always having that fight to be resilient, because it's very difficult to uh, run a business or a startup in India context, and people who have gone through that, they already know about what is required to get in there. So there was always resilience, there was always risk mitigations in place. But then yeah, with COVID thing, all that is needed is if you had a 3 months, 6 months, 9 months plan, now you need to actually have 1 year, 2 year plans, which would actually mitigate your risk much better. Because yes, in current context, where you have business models which are actually uh, requiring you to be on the road, then it's going to be very difficult. But then yeah, if you have business models which are actually in the cloud or online, I think you're pretty safe. But then again, such businesses also would have to have uh, these 1 year, 2 year resiliency plans in place, just to ensure that yeah, anything of this sort is not going to hamper their business. Because most of the companies which had anything to do beyond the road, the revenues have been shut to zero. So yes, you need to have those resiliency plans much better than earlier.
In
Another
fact,
point. Yes,
the
sorry.
government has announced a grant. I think it was just yesterday or the day before, for calling for startups or entrepreneurs to come with Zoom-like application development. They are saying that they will give for the top three winners 25 lakhs and even up to 1 crore for the selector do this.
Yeah.
So in fact, you would see probably not the startup. So as an outsider, I can give a view. There's going to be opportunities out there, and the only thing is the shift might be there on a different, because the kind of the gig economy oriented or those kind of things will actually increase. Hyper delivery based things, but in a different mode. We need innovations there, and we need different kind of solutions. We might need more applications and startup solutions in the pharma industry, healthcare industry. So probably this pandemic situation has actually resulted in with the side effect, good side effect, to say that there's going to be a lot more opportunities, because it has opened up the shortcomings we have in terms of the life solutions and life-saving solutions, and that's what will actually grow, I suppose. Hemant said, the ones who are more focusing on the delivery, on the food, on the road solutions will get affected. But we need different solutions for them. Either these startup companies adapt their solutions, or we need new startups. But the startup opportunities per se is not going to reduce.
Just to add on that, if you see in Google, if you search from past 3 months back, or let's say from October, you had a different historical trends of search made. When COVID started, COVID was the only one which is the highest in that particular search part. If you further drill down to COVID, as of now, in the beginning of January, we were looking more into the symptoms and kind of a cause and other things. As we go down, people are looking into solutions, COVID solutions for anything, for my enterprise part, or COVID solution for pharmaceuticals. Where is the medicine available? They know the symptoms, they know those things, right? So if you are an entrepreneur and if you are doing a startup part of it, and if your service which you are offering through this particular platform, the solution which you are bringing is a product, if it is a platform-based service or a product-based service or a resource-based service or is a kind of interaction-based service. If it's a resource-based service which you are dependent on a people-based driven activities, where you for example, Swiggy, you have an app, but to deliver the outcome to the customer, to the business, you need resources. You will fail. But if you look into a platform-based service like communication, I don't need resources to go and deliver the product to customer. If I get a WebEx or something, if I do that part, today you have a go-to meeting, do you have a WebEx and all? I come up with something which is saying that it doesn't need an internet. What are you talking about? It doesn't need internet to do that. It's possible. So if you're coming with a product-based service as a startup point of view, which is not resource-based, and if this continues for over a period of time, regardless of whether you get a compensation benefit from any organization of this, with your capability or your resources as a prototype model, because most of the organization, if you look from a software point of view, all these applications are available for a 30-day free trial, all applications in the worldwide. And if in case you want to extend this particular license after the prototype is developed, and you say that I have a technology which can use a product-based service, people are ready to do a contract-based services for 6 months with zero-based part of it. So it depends upon if my startup organization thinking is from a solution-based things to solve a problem or to make a money or a business model catering to a platform or other things, they will always flourish. And they may not have that kind of a resourcing pool requirement, but still they can still work in a collaborative way to form a team of resources of that particular skill set and then deliver it, as long as the delivery doesn't need a resource pool to deliver that outcome. So startups are impacted, but people are now thinking with a fresh mind of what automation should I bring in, what kind of product services should I use, what is that which I can use as no touch resources, what are the things that customers are now looking forward from there. So if you go and say Google search for COVID solutions, you will find thousands of answers where on that part, because now people are thinking in the direction now. And that's a thing that people are uncertain about this time, that we are all feeling that in another 2 months this lockdown situation will either stop, or based on the current downtrending scenarios in India, which is in a better control as compared to that, it might stop, or there will be a medicine in the 2 months time which can resist us for further increasing that part. Imagine if it goes for 1 year, all organizations, irrespective of whether it's a resource or this, will have to shape their part for this. So Swiggy and other things, if in case they have to still continue with this, they will have to come with a drone model. They will have to come with it. There will be security constraints and other things, but they will have to go with a no resource touch, because even though you may be delivering as a resource with a no touch policy, the receiving end may be constrained, saying that I don't want someone to come with package which might have a infected part of it. So people are a little constrained about it. They will still look to order for that because of the need and requirements, but there will be a kind of a people who will restrict to that kind of business being accepted. So people are now looking that if it is a 1 year part, how this solutions can be more non-resource based model, how we can improve the overall economy of that particular solutions, etc. So I'm very sure you will see new products, new solutions, which are totally off the box, which we haven't heard. People generally say a car should have 4 tires and should have this. Car should have a fuel and all. You go to Netherlands, it doesn't require any kind of a thing. They see that this is not a car should not have a 4 car. You go to China, they say the car doesn't have a tire at all. So people are changing from a product with the imagination now with a totally different way of solution-based product, which is like a view of what you have imagined. So those things will come. This is the year where we see that inventions will happen. The last invention happened was the .NET or the internet, and now it will be a new way of inventing things coming from different intellectuals and others, and we all will be one of the users of those things, or you could be one of those people who will be inventing those things also.
Yeah, just to add to that, when we spoke about resources and Swiggy constraint for resources which are going to be on the road, there are already business models which have started where these resources, these human resources, are actually pooled together. Where there are companies like Hilton, which are actually creating a pool of resources, because obviously hospitality business is impacted. What they are doing is having this pool put on the table so that companies like Walgreens, the pharma companies, can then use these as a temporary resources. Same is happening with the India context also, where taxi aggregators were used for deliveries. So you'll see a shift, and that shift is again maybe necessity based, but then it is changing the world. There have been so many small scale industries that are started just to produce masks in these last month or so, making Ayurvedic medicines, which could be a big business in the coming days. So it's again driven by some things, but yeah, if as a startup you keep your eyes and ears open and look at those opportunities. Swiggy did that, where they were trying to deliver goods where from a particular shop to your home, and that's what was needed in this context, where I don't want to venture out of my house. I still want some items. Okay, they made it possible. So if you have your eyes and ears open and look at these opportunities, and then this pandemic would give a lot of opportunities. So you just have to be open as a startup and see where you really want to be. And as I said, it's not going to hamper startups as such. It's just that they'll have to keep innovating, look at different ways of doing their businesses.
Yeah. So just to add from the lens of a startup founder, I would say, this will become very, sector focus going forward, at least for some time. Especially I see the sectors like preventive healthcare, digital lifestyle, educational tech, environmental focus as well, because people will become a lot more conscious about environment and sustainability solutions. Yes, there will be stress on oil and gas companies and their sectors, banking, financial sectors, as well as e-commerce or any of those sectors. They will go through a little bit of a turmoil, but essentially what I'm saying is the startups which are very focused on these segments which I talked about, I think they will see a good opportunity and they will see a positive impact because of the pandemic. So I would like to also bring up a point again from my own startup experience. So what we are doing, right? Like there will be some kind of a lack of visibility, there a lack of uncertainty. Well, let me not paint any rosy picture. So having said that, this is an opportunity to emerge stronger and use this window to really attract the talent. So most of the times startups are always they have tough time finding a good talent, and especially losing to the bigger companies or the startups which pay pretty big paychecks. But this is the opportunity where the startups which are early startups or but doing something probably meaningful in these sectors, there's an opportunity window for us to attract the talent. At the same time, what we are trying to do is there's a concept called contract to hire. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. It's called a temporary hiring or contract to hire, which is essentially there is no hard and fast rule that hey, you should be a full-time employee, but you can still be associated with the company. And given how the situation evolves, then the company and the contract employee can come to an agreement to make it a formal engagement later once things become a lot more clear. So in this, what happens because of the contract to hire is there's a little bit of flexibility on both the company and the employee side, on the startup and the employee. So, and definitely an opportunity for the the engineers to get engaged in the startups, right? There's a perfect timing from the perspective that, as the other panelists rightly highlighted, the innovation, the intellectual capital, these will be the areas where there is a lot more drive in the startups now. If you look at even the COVID taunts that is going on, be it from the government of India, the startup India that they have initiated to address a very specific problems, and they went through a very clear documentation about what are the problems that the government is going through in terms of the equipment, in terms of the masks, in terms of the the preventive side, what can be done, how do you build some apps to make sure that you can trace the path of the, especially people who got probably infected or traveled. So a lot of innovation is happening around these areas, and I would strongly recommend the engineers to think out of the box and be part of these challenges, right? And this will give you a good visibility for the companies as a talent that you're doing something. And number two is you will get definitely some satisfaction, not just from learning, but also making a social impact. So this is one point I would like to highlight. And the other part I want to just mention is that startups are going to be, fund constrained. So there will be the investment teams will be different. So those startups which are aligning with the segments which I mentioned about some time back, the investment teams may look positive. Having said that, the investors are also moving cautiously optimistic. So this is where I would say startups are going through a tough phase, but not all the startups. But at the same time, there are some startups which can really, emerge as a stronger companies if they do well in this spirit.
There's one more thing which was very promising is, having said that, companies, there will be a period where they will actually have a dip, especially in the services industry, where we can't, avoid the economical impact that's going to happen, at least for a short duration. It's just that we are discussing whether the duration is going to be 3 months or is it going to be 2 years. There are predictions going from on the spectrum from one end to another end. But then this is a time also for companies, and some of them are really thinking about it already, is converting some of their resource pool in towards the, directing them into the entrepreneurial activities. So we are looking at startup world from an outside the industry also in terms of budding startups, but at the same time within large companies also there's going to be a lot more entrepreneurial activities, because one is you will use your resource, which are talent pool. You have a good talent pool, you have trained talent pool, and no company should waste on those resources or let go of them or to restart after 2 years. This is not going to be beneficial. The best thing is to root them into a lot of entrepreneurial activities, innovation activities, come up with ideas and expand your portfolio. This you are going to see, and that will have also ripple effects. Some of them, as they are going to expand their portfolio, and it's not going to have enough revenues or resource pool to really make it into big businesses, which means there's going to be a lot more outsourcing happening from there, and a lot of other startups will have opportunities to grab from there. So I think it's going to have, maybe the duration will change, whether it's going to happen immediately.
So we've seen that not only technology is necessary to startup, we also need economy. So how do you think the budding startups can have economy? Now we are seeing a decline in economy due to the impact of COVID-19. So what are the measures they can take to increase their economy?
Yeah, well, see, it's going to be very difficult for, let's
Yeah.
say, individual industry to really boost the economy. I think we are seeing this is global. This is absolutely global. We can see, the entire world getting affected, all the countries without exceptions. There is going to be an impact, and I don't think individual industry as such can boost a lot. It's going to be a joint effort from the industries as well as the governments to boost it up, and it's going to take time. So there's no easy answer to it. Industries do not have a magic wand. the flattened economy curve is there right in front of our eyes. It's going to have its effect for the next 1 or 2 years. And I think staying, efficient, looking into the bare minimal sustainable practices only, and also cost efficient measures. These are ways to go for the startups as well as for the industries. So there's no shortcut to this, and there's no easy solution to it. Because whether we like it or not, you can see all the predictions. Most of it is negative growth, or 0%. Even for India, there are debates to say whether it's going to be an absolute flattened curve at 0%, or best it could only be 2% next year. So it's like it's going to be a very difficult time, at least for the next 1 year, till you have really booster measures starting to take its effect. But then staying cost efficient, having tightened purses, and looking into only productive measures, focusing on the productivity, and that's going to be the only way to go forward, at least.
If your question is
Yeah,
from
just to
a
add to
startup
what
point, please go ahead.
I want to just add here, I think one interesting trend I would say is, there is always this economic up and downturns, but it's actually when the downturn happens, when actually the startups have to become really innovative, and they should probably pivot. Pivot is a word typically we use in the startup, to really look at those opportunities and go after it, and be very razor focused. This is where actually we have to probably, this is where usually the startups do a lot of cutthroat prioritization in what exactly they have to do and how they have to deal with the opportunities at hand, and pick those opportunities which are going to drive their in terms of economy, as in like a company can sustain, right? So I want to also add, recently, especially US, they've announced a stimulus package, and this stimulus package, they called it as Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, for all the companies, not just startups. And they're giving the stimulus as a way for companies to sustain during this time, not letting go of their employees. So I would like to mention that that is one trend that we have seen from a government initiative, right, where investors are holding on to their pockets very tight. Then the government is supporting. So I think we have not seen any announcement yet from the government of India, but I think probably we should see something like that as a relief for the startups, hopefully in the next few quarters.
Yeah, at least for the major sectors in India, for at least the IT sector, it's pretty legal now that if you are letting go anybody during the COVID phase, that's not allowed. So from legal perspective, that's being debarred. So
Yeah, if your question is from a, how do we bring economy to scale by a country or for a line of business or part, people from an enterprise, from a client point of view, from the CEO, CFO, CTOs are thinking in a different dimension. Take a 3D model: country, multiple countries, line of business, which is sectors like your finance, banking, retail, e-commerce, healthcare, travel and tourism, or anything. And then you have specific areas where you say operations, resourcing, hiring, supply chain, marketing, etc., which are your departments or other things. If you see the 3D model of that particular thing, if you see the most impacted country with all this impacted in all this area is US and UK. If you see from a manufacturing point of view, they had their kind of business models in China and other things. Last 4 months, we in IBM have got tons of requirement talking about shifting a manufacturing base from China to India. It's a shift. People are looking from a manufacturing industry to be changed from China to this as their contract model because of situations like this. So which means for every problem, there is an opportunity. So now people are looking into that particular opportunistic model now, and then trying to say that what it calls from a scale of economy to improve the business, because they have seen the downtrends of this COVID, that this is impacting the overall economy by trends, business models and everything. So now India is in a kind of a factor zone where last 5 years, if I look into the IT part of it, because of the BRICS model, which is like your Brazil, Russia, China and everything, the services was outsourced, irrespective of whether it is an IBM, Wipro, Nokia or anything else. If I take 16 lakh employees being recruited in India and they have to go to a job offerings in India as a startup into an IT or product companies, we had a percentage for everyone to join the companies and do that. Last 5 to 10 years, if you see the trends of this, 14% of those India delivery model, irrespective whether it's IBM, Infosys, Wipro, Nokia, or Dell or anything, has shifted to BRICS, which means their delivery models were there. Now, because of those countries being impacted at COVID and they do not have a control on their downtrend scenarios and they do not have a country specific options because they were never into that kind of a thing. If you see the overall country part, IT services is now favoring a shift from a percentage factor of going out of IBM, going out of India to coming back to India. So which means there will be a lot of job opportunities in India, which we will all have to scale. To scale that part, once again, there is a territory of your skills. Manufacturing was never our skill as compared to China and other things. So if you are looking for a problem to solve the problem, still you are having a no touch policy, a no part, you still cannot go to a manufacturing base. But if in case you look into the domain principles or you enrich your skills into that part, if I'm a kind of engineer, if I'm a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer, if I want to enrich my skills into that part, and tomorrow once it grows in that part, I may be able to scale a better job opportunity with a better scale into a manufacturing industry rather than going into a Java technology and then scaling it up. Because the job opportunities in IT part may be around 10%, maybe in a manufacturing part it will be 40%. So people are trying to shift. I come with this experience because we do a lot of IT outsourcing across the world, and I travel world with all this kind of experience with these people, and they see this kind of things which are coming into India. India is now a favored from a country, from a cultural and various other skills and other things. So skill is not a problem. Resource is not a problem. The abundancy of policies and controls is not a problem. People are much more fluid in other parts of it. What is the concern is we do not have that niche skills because of which we lost the business to different territories of business and other things. That's what we have to scale up on. And then the economies of that, let's not worry about a resource graduate here taking those things. Strategies have been built from an organization point of view where they see the supply chain is the weakest area in the manufacturing industry, that they are not able to compete and they will have to cut down their cost and other things. They are coming up with their own solutions of how supply chain can be improved in this COVID situation if it is going from 2 months lockdown to another 1 year. It's their problem. They will come with some innovative solutions and they do that. I was talking more about from a resourcing part, from a shift from a country to India. That's where I think we will have to focus about what is that these countries were having a skill factor where we need to have a skill where to meet that particular gap from that particular engineering with a true factor, or let's talk about design and complexity of the products and solutions. The way China products creates products in a shorter lifetime as compared to the lifetime which we say. If you see about the design to build activities in China is less than 2 to 3 weeks, whereas in India it takes around almost like 7 to 10 months to design those things. So that's the area. It's not about the skill, it's about the timing, it's about the short range of delivering those products in agile and delivering those things. And that's where industries in IT and domain in India are keenly focusing that what is that these countries are favorable of, what is that I need to bring a skill with this particular direction of reducing the cost economy, reducing the cost of the product, reducing the making of this particular product with the highest technology. So highest technology, highest skill factor, highest or the lowest cost with the lowest turnaround time. These are the 4 factors which will change the shift of the new solutions being factored inside India by all of us.
Having said that, see, if you look at the 1980s manufacturing wave, India actually kind of missed that wave, right? And of course, we got into the IT services and software world, and we were kind of growing as indisputable power in the world. Yeah, but now you look at we have to go for a balance of multiple industries. And definitely, if government also can provide the right focus into it and right stimulus and right measures. For example, 2 important things is we have to get the rural India on board. We just cannot get into manufacturing wave by depending on our urban community. That's not going to happen. Our metros cannot help. We have to get into the rural population. Upskilling will be a very key, topic then. How government is going to, and this is not going to have just from the elite universities which are able to do it. Here we will really have to have the academia world and then the government as well as industries joining together to see how we can upskill the population for this upcoming sectors, especially if it is manufacturing. You just cannot go without rural industry, right? So this is going to be probably bringing up more opportunities, but in a different way, in a different geography. And hopefully we see more even all-rounded development across India rather than just the metros.
So talking about
Absolutely.
upskilling,
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Just to add
Yeah.
there, I think just to add to the other panelists, I think I totally agree on this. Looking at tier 2 and tier 3, and especially the rural side of the India, how they can be part of the larger ecosystem and the economy play. So this is an opportunity actually to really bring everybody onto the board, and be it Make in India or be it any in terms of distance learning, even for the rural India. So there is a lot of opportunities I think this will open up. So I would like to second that opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, so talking about upskilling, we have a question from the audience. What should the educational sectors do to align their curriculum to train students to face a post-COVID-19 world?
One thing that you have to focus on is go into research. I mean, as the academic world, we are still predominantly theory oriented. You know, we have to start focusing on application of the concepts, and do not rely simply on the companies hiring you to get into the application-based knowledge imparting. So universities have to get into the application-based concepts, problem solving skills, innovation, and more research. Because I think all said and done, if you really look at the top Ivy League universities across the world, the major strength they have is, I mean, if you have to really corner it down, one is their innovation ability, their research abilities. I wouldn't even say innovation, their research abilities. They go the in-depth studies, So that's one thing. Even in India, if you see the higher graduation, we have to improve the research quotient there. The R part of it, we do call R&D, even in terms of the industries. We have a lot of R&D companies here, but the R part of it is very less. And same is also for the students and for the academic world, that the universities have to focus on the R part of it. Get into research, prepare the research ability, where the real in-depth talent is developed among your students, and the students have a flavor for that. They have to develop. It's my cup of tea, because today we are all surface. I mean, most of it is focused on programming. In spite of what engineering you study, at the end of the day, people go into programming. Isn't it a fact, right? But if you want to really go for manufacturing, if you want to go for pharmaceutical, if you want to go into the healthcare industry research, it's got to come with a lot of more R capabilities that's needed. So that's one focus. Clearly, research is one focus that you have to do. Second is, of course, join more hands with the industry. The industry academia collaboration can actually improve even further. Focus on working on real life projects, real life industry field issues which are coming. Don't get into theoretical projects. So that's one other focus that universities can do immediately. I think something immediately that we can focus even for the current ongoing batches is actually work on more live projects. And of course, much more closer collaboration here would help with industries. And also industries have to, the industry players have to come forward and look into, because at the end of the day, this is nothing but an investment that we do for our own future generation employees. That's how we see it in Nokia as well. So I think if we are able to get this widespread, and if both the hands can join, then I think India will develop that R capability as well as the problem solving abilities.
I will add to one point which Punya said.
Sure.
Assuming that the graduate hire pool, which we take, they are into basically three categories: a kind of a standard, niche, and demand. That's the kind of a thing. And they are based on the engineering kind of a portfolio, being it a normal engineering or with an NIT or with an IIT kind of a thing. Okay, that's the thing. So there is a cost model. We don't expect from an IT organization within India, we don't expect that they come and disturb the economy of the cost model of the graduate hire. Assuming that the cost model still remains the same, that we don't expect much from you, but at the same time you maintain the cost model by increasing or upskilling your capability, right? Which means Your salary structure will still be the same thing. It may be partly 5%, 10%, that doesn't matter the cost of the economy part of it, but it's still within the brace of this particular tier model. Okay. So if you have to increase your upskill to beat someone as a competition, not because of an assumption of a salary part of it, now there are three parts of it. HR is now oriented in the India enterprise model into three various parts: a standard service, niche service, demand in service. If you have to upskill something and your service is capability on a standard service is something which is abundant and available. A person is not a criteria there. If you are not there, I can get some other person to do it, because I know the cost of economy, I can do that particular work. I don't get from this engineering college, I get from somebody else. So if you have to look from an upskill point of view, you have to be either in a niche area or a demand area. What is the niche area and demand area? Niche area is something where it is like of possibility of low, it's a skill requirement, but not available on demand, which means those skills where you have built your knowledge from, let's say you have a Java knowledge, and the Java knowledge is from a technology point of view. I can get any from standard point of view or Java, .NET and all. But if a person knows how the Java is used from a retail point of view, or from an aviation point of view, or from a travel and transportation point of view, if people can make a differentiator between that from their upskill point of view. So which means, as Pony mentioned, understanding the use of a technology to a line of business which is fit for purpose and ready to use as available for you to demand in the market. That's the thing. So which means the time to train the graduate hire pool to bring to that particular subject part to get to that experience, if that part of delta, let's say 4 weeks or 10 weeks of that experience is given in your educational part, it becomes you to be competing among others in that part and being niche, which means you don't mix yourself. You are actually competing with 2 years fresher who is already into a job, who is still learning into the path of success. That's the niche area. Third is something which is never there. There is a new demand coming on automation, machine learning and something where I don't have resource pool in at all. That's a new area where the services are being used, or an entrepreneur's point of view is being developed, and people are looking into those kind of solutions. I don't know what the product looks like. I don't know what the solution could be, but people are asking me for those particular products and solutions. That's a kind of on demand. If you target yourself to bring in a upskill into that particular zone of service by learning some niche technologies and make those products as a product to offer services, etc., you have offbeat a 4-level categorization of resource layer in the between, which means you don't have to worry about a staffing from a resource part now. Even if you are there for 3 months or 4 months on bench or not with any job, because of the demand being available across the world or that part, it is irrespective of whether where you are. So people are now looking into that kind of a thing. So within our organizations also, now HR has come up with the saying that you have been there for last 15-20 years. Who are you? Yeah, I know your position and role, but who are you? Are you offering standard? Are you offering niche? Are you offering on demand? If you're on standard, my cost of business for doing a standard is 0 to 10 lakhs. Get out. Get out. If my niche is there, it is from 10 to 20 lakhs. Stay or get out. My bench period and attrition for that particular thing, I can extend by 2 months. For a standard, 5 days of bench period. Get out. For a niche, I can sustain a bench period of 6 months, which means I may not have a project right now to deliver that particular capability, but you have a skill where I can sustain you for 6 months because I know what capabilities you come to meet my particular demand. So the only answer which I feel is adding to Pune is, think about from a niche area and this, what are those technologies and what are those services where you can leverage in your curriculum of your educational part as a side item apart from doing engineering part, where you can offbeat your 2 years freshers or 2 year graduate as a competition. I'm not competing any person or something here, but this is something that if you have to position yourself as a single resource from a graduate hire competing in the Indian market or in the outside market, these are the 2 levels which will benefit those resources and competing with that. That's my thought process.
Yeah.
There's one softer
want to-
aspect as well, which is the work ethics. Something that really students have to think of is the call and the focus on the efficiency, productivity, and the effectiveness is going to be very high. Like I said, of course, your talent, your skill is fun. there is going to be a lot more focus on the efficiency and productivity and effectiveness. So, discipline and students, the workforce ethics is going to be, at a very high level called for than ever before. So that's something that students have to really prepare for. So there's going to be a lot more demand on these factors. So students have to be prepared on the softer aspects as well.
Yeah, just to add to it, if
Yeah,
there are
please.
two candidates at the same level of technical, or are one much higher in terms of technical strength, but on the ethics level he's a little low, we would let go that person. So it's that important, the ethics part of it, or the attitude part of it.
Just want to add here another perspective, how the educational sector can do something about in the current situation and even for the future, is really shaping the engineers to think like entrepreneurs, taking any problem, the social problem or a business problem, and working alongside what I say is MHRD's Innovation Council, the Ministry of HRD, Government of India initiative. They're inviting all the educational institutions to collaborate along with the industry and solve some of the big problems of India. And here there are two things I would like to share the pointers. One is called Samadhan. The other one is called Smart India Hackathon. Some of you maybe are aware about these things, but I would like to share these 2 pointers because these are excellent platforms for educational institutions. And if the colleges can really look at using these platforms to shape engineers, not just in terms of technical skills, programming languages, but can they think like an entrepreneur? Imagine that they have to not look for an opportunity to join a company, but to become an entrepreneur at the end of their course. So I'm very sure, I think that's a trend that will pick up in the future. And I'm already seeing the trend because I've seen recently, I've been engaged with one of the student project groups from a college in Bangalore, where they got funded by the government of India. And they are getting on to starting their own company as soon as they complete their education. So there are such opportunities. So I would like you all to keep your antennas open there and just look at such opportunities as well.
Thank you, sir, for letting us know about the various opportunities. So Muralidhar sir has shared us a link as well. I'll share with all the audience. The next question is, so what are the keynotes for the students graduating this year? Like we've seen that there is an increase in job opportunities for IT sectors, and what are the skills they need to improve on? Coming to other sectors like mechanical, electronics, and not only engineering, apart from engineers, the other sectors who all the students who are graduating this year, what would you like to tell them? What's your message to them?
Yeah, I think like we looked into it, first is application oriented. Look at where you want to work, where are the opportunities, and upskill yourself for those opportunities. That is important. Rather than having the generalistic skills, having the niche skills is important. And even more is look at the 2 to 3 years horizon so that you are able to prepare yourself in terms of the demand that's coming. There's no point in focusing on something where there's not going to be demand, immediate demand. That's something very important for the students to focus on, because we have been discussing on a lot of verticals and domain which is going to also increase going forward. So that's one thing that people have to really focus on, application oriented. And of course, like we said, the immediate graduates are probably the ones who are supposed to be in the industry in the next couple of months. One of the major challenge you may face is like, what if the offers are getting delayed, or what if the joining dates are getting delayed? How do we fill the gap there? And the thing is, that is where people have to look at upskilling themselves. Bridge the gap, bridge the period. It is not really a time period to sit back or take off, but that is a period where you have to look at entrepreneurial skills, hone your skills there, look at solutions for the problems faced by the industry, faced by the society. So there are a lot of things that you can work on which will really keep you sharp. So that's very important. And also in terms of the advanced skills, like if you look at artificial intelligence, robotics, or machine learning, these are going to be niche areas and skills which are required for the upcoming industries, like whatever be it. If you're looking at the remote deliveries, if you're looking at zero touch services, these are the technologies which are going to be used, and that is something that students can engage themselves in terms of learning, upskilling, because that's not something that you have learned in depth except for probably an elective. You're not really focused on acquiring those skills, and that's something that students can focus on and learn.
I'll give some thing from a cultural point of view, adding to Puneet. Indians are good in everything, master of none. Countries across world, they are good in one topic and they are master in everything, master to the detail. There is a time when a master to detail will fail, a master to all will rise. When we talk about specific learnings and be ready for that particular thing, I cannot change in this forum or anything that a mindset of a Indian graduate or anyone coming will change that master of all part. We are all tuned to that. If today I'm doing this particular thing, in another 2 years I want to upskill and then I want to go into a different line of business, different kind of a thing, and then get my good earning or good life balance or whatever. So you cannot beat that. So they will always change. What is important for us is to make a two-dimensional way of scaling the part. Ethics, as Tony and Hemant mentioned, is very, very, very important. I will give a side part, a separate part of it. When you go to an organization, in an IT organization or anything, you are under someone. You are under someone to perform. And that person who is evaluating you or taking your feedback or putting you on a job for a specific activity, he thinks you of a kind of a factor where it is there. So it is a very old school of what you say, an example. Any time, at any given point of time, any person who takes this particular decision of information judges a person into 5 factors based on 5 animal traits: dog, monkey, or horse, or eagle, or something. You will have situations as a manager who will take you for a work where it doesn't require a skill at that point of time. That particular week, it doesn't require a skill. It requires sustenance. I want someone in the weekend, whatever it comes. It doesn't matter what is the requirement. If it comes, I want a person to be available. So I want someone as a donkey who understands the requirement for me to take care of that particular responsibility. Tomorrow there is a niche requirement, something coming up, and I want a person who is thinking out of the box, monkey factor. If the person has to be thinking totally out of the box, I don't have a brain because I'm a manager, I have lost all my things, but I want a monkey-like person who comes with saying that what you're doing is something different. I think this is the way to do it. So, and then fast, like horse. There are some things where you have to do in a faster period, faster time. You need a skilled resource deployed on the particular work. You have a critical incident where people are struggling to get this particular on. You want a horse or someone with that mind to say that fine, do these 2 items, problem will be work around, problem will be solved. So when you look into 2 factors, an engineering mind and a management mind. When you look from an engineering mind, you cannot beat the business thought what Muralidhar and other who have done the management point of view cannot solve the problem. When we went into our kind of management discussions with things, we say that as the engineers, we have a logic. We work on technical aspects and everything, and we are very hard on that. We know how to solve a problem, whereas management knows what is the impact of a problem and how to mitigate the business impact of a problem. Engineering doesn't know what is the business impact of a problem. If you get a severity 1 incident on a particular thing, I know because of the 2 hour loss, which have resolved it within satisfaction, I assume I've done in satisfaction. But Muralidhar and other thing, they can find out there is a 2 billion loss because of that particular critical factor. They are the management. So you cannot defeat a management part. So if you are an engineering graduate and wanting to continue into your engineering path with the upskilling factor, 2-dimensional part, go into those niche areas and other things as there. Second, continue on those ethics and everything. The ethics means the way you develop your soft skill, aptitude, or your this 5 parts. How you can evolve yourself as a person in an industry who are willing to listen, who are already available to deploy or kind of a ready-made skill, who can think out of a box and everything. So these are some things which are not taught in an organization and neither in educational part. This comes with an experience. And when you look into that, you still cannot go back. I go back to my old words. You cannot be like a master of one in detail. If you are able to look into your engineering, if you're looking into chemical part, the most important part when you look into that is the domain skills. What is, for example, if you are going in finance in something, you can learn a technology, you can do that. But before you attempt an interview to suppose if a finance company comes, ICC comes, or some banking company, Barclays comes to your organizations, etc., you need to understand what is Barclays doing. They will not take you just like this because there is a need for a technology part of it. You should know, oh, Barclays is good in India. They are looking for a people in banking part of it with little banking knowledge, with equity and trades, post trade knowledge, or equity finance, market risk kind of a thing. What is this term mean? What is this term mean, and what is the use of this term in technology? What technologies are behind this to shape out the delivery model of a market risk and market risk equity part? You don't understand. You don't have to understand the management point of view. You need to understand the domain behind this particular business model, domain behind these sectors. What are those kind of domains trying to offer? Technology is the where you will be able to deliver. You will not be competing, or you will not be challenged on those areas. But if you have got 100 resources coming from your college attempting to Barclays, and they have got only 10 positions in that, how do you outsmart yourself into those 10 positions to start with before you attempt in a bigger scale of 16 lakh employees worldwide? Is look into the domain part. A company has come to your organization. What is that you're shaping yourself from a domain skill? You have a little understanding of what the domain does, and apart from that, having a soft skills. When you attend to particular interview, you resonate to the ask. You are having an aptitude skills of listening, understanding, deploying those capabilities, and the people are listening. People are saying that, yeah, this person, he has got 72%, other person has got 71%, or let's 60, 65. 65 to 71 doesn't matter much. Pass mark is 60%. You're already passed. But if your percentage on your soft skills and your aptitude is 5% more or 2% more, I would like to have you scaled first among those 10 than the second one. So always be presentive, always be more receptive to take those kind of advancement in your soft skills and ethics and other things. Simplicity is the best answer. And then second is think about something on a domain part where somebody is coming from there. If you speak their language, it becomes like your own family. And the person feels that, oh, this person is able to understand what I'm able to speak and what he's able to demand for that. And he will be more resonant to take you. Oh, out of 100 people, there were 10 people who were thinking from a banking part, from where banking is able to deliver that particular thing. I didn't ask this requirement, but these people were shaping their answers from a technology to a bank, technology to a bank, technology to a bank. They didn't resonate from a technology to agriculture. They didn't do it for technology to a finance or something else, etc. So they will resonate more better and say, these people are really done some homework. And that's where people should be able to scale to the presence of mind, delivery model, resonate to the requirement, and then upskill in the background.
Mr. Muralidhar has
Just to add
something
here,
to add on.
yeah, I just
Yes.
want to add here. My perspective, what I feel from a skills point of view is a little counterintuitive. It may sound counterintuitive. Would like all the engineers to go back to pure sciences. Go back to your pure sciences, math, physics, biology, chemistry. Why I'm saying this is, when you decided to become an engineer, right, you never thought about a scenario that what we are going through now. And I'm very, very sure post-COVID scenario, the world will be different, where medical and engineering lines will converge. Can we really challenge ourselves to stop this kind of scenario coming in future? People are already talking about W curve, that this pandemic could come again in some other form. Or is this the lockdown is the only solution? Can we be proactive about it? So that's where the medical and engineering, and why I said pure sciences is, if you look at people are going the herd mentality of, okay, there is a trend on artificial intelligence. Let me learn Python and learn a few pandas libs and few, learn TensorFlow or scikit-learn and all that. And okay, I'm good with artificial intelligence. Let me call myself as an AI engineer and start applying for the jobs. I said, no, please don't do that mistake. Go back to your math, because the foundation of artificial intelligence, or for that matter, any of these things, is math. You need to have a strong foundation in math. Without that foundation, people want to just learn programming languages. I would say go back to your pure sciences, biology, physics. So these are the again giving the examples of the kind of innovations that are happening to address the the situation now. We still don't have a solution to the problem that we are facing for the pandemic, right? So can we become like scientists, right? So when I really look at the post scenario or the new world, and even for the future generation, the students who are in 8 to 10th, or I'm sure they will be looking at beyond just computer science or beyond only learning few programming languages. They will look beyond that. So this is my thought on this. So where engineering and medical fields will converge. So go back to your basics and pure sciences.
I just want to add to Murli's point of view. For resources or staffing who are wanting to go abroad, there will be people, once this COVID situation softens, there will be opportunity for people to go for the MS, and once they are in a job, they would like to go into an H1 category part of it. These countries, when they offer this particular thing, today we have a constraint that there is a huge employment crisis, and there is a huge kind of a ponder on their economic balance because of this economic employment part of it. Imagine that this situation softens, and then there is a backtrack where we say that travel and then foreign study and the employment part from H1 or other work visas or other business, not business visa, the work visas are available. If you look into, it's very easy to tell that, yeah, I have gone to US on an H1B visa, or somebody has gone with an H1B visa and all. Just to give you an example, if somebody has to write the information written into a 40-page document about yourself, you as a person, writing an H1 visa input document for that, as Murli mentioned, your basic science is very much important. It talks about you. So it talks about your daily activities, what will you do, what is the niche thing you are there, why should you be considered against the crisis or scenarios who are there already in US, and do you see a specific place where you're going, do you know your skills, whatever you're telling me, how many people are there already, how many people are there with employment or unemployment? These are the questions. If you go to Google and see for H1B or work visa specific template for US and Europe, you'll find a document which has got 40 pages. You look and answer those questions from your point of view as of now, without knowing what you know about you, and you answer that. You will fail. I will not say you. We at an experience level, we have failed to answer that questions because the way the questions are oriented are your basic things. What is the niche thing about you? Who are you? What is that you should be available? So when I look into those things, the requirement is basically an Albert Einstein. If you're not an Albert Einstein, you don't fit into that resume at all. If you say that I was part of a team and doing these activities and I was part of a team, Albert Einstein was not a team. Albert Einstein was Albert Einstein, who has developed, designed, implemented with that particular thing. So who are you? Go back to the basics and nurture your basics with that particular skill set, and hone a specific area where you feel you will be comfortable to demand yourself into that particular thing. When you look into that region of that particular thing, when you answer your 40-50 questions which talks about that, you will find yourself that, yeah, I think I am ready to take an on-site position because of all those extremes which have been asked in this particular question. If you are able to benchmark to that particular requirement today, don't worry about you going today or tomorrow. You will certainly land up at some point of time. That's a vision you should always carry. If you're looking for an on-site, or if you're looking for a job opportunity, or looking for 3-4 down the years, I want to be in on-site in US or after this lockdown preference and all, you need to have that particular vision of what is that it demands and how we are going to shape up that particular scale of upskilling or that particular demand position accordingly. And you will always have different things coming about, whether it's a requirement to learn a technology or a technology with a fit for product, or something which is, as mentioned by Murli and Pani and others, about artificial knowledge or machine learning, etc. Everything is now, imagine yourself, if you have to offer if you want to hire someone and do that, are you looking for a Java person, or are you looking for a person who comes with a Java with a ready-made product delivered to you? Product-based solutions. So people are now mostly shifted towards called a service-oriented technology, with service-oriented models, which is called like a product which gives you the output of it. It is taking out all those barriers in between of technology, support, contract, cost, or life sciences, or resources, or everything. think about skills where it is more about a product service or a service in that particular thing which gives you a direct offering to the customer, or think about something which is not available in these niche areas, but you are slightly inclined towards it, or develop your home science or other things to an area where you are into the bookish practical knowledge into your hands-on experience, and that will help you a lot. If you go to a as you mentioned, as Murli mentioned about the home science in biology and all, if you go to a pharmaceutical and if you talk about pharmaceutical drug, and drug talks about a chemical composition with this particular composition, you know a composition of this particular and mix is dangerous, and you know this composition cannot be fit for purpose for a social use or for something else. You have directly taken 2 levels of internal training of yourself before you actually deploy yourself into the particular role, and you say that fine, even though I'm an engineer, but I know that this product with this capability cannot go. So which means you have learned the trade secrets of this organization with do's and don'ts. That's where that's what Murli mentioned about learning your basic traits about the technology, about your basic bookish or curriculum courses. It will certainly help you in long run.
Thanks a lot, Venugopal sir. I hope that was informative and it helped most of them. Since we're running out of time, we have a last question. Will there be an increase in global recruitment as work from home is increasing? So we know work from home, when the employees are opting for work from home, we can see that the company is also saving their, like they are saving money in maybe the travel or electricity bills, etc. So that is also adding to the economy of each company. So how do you think it is helping in the recruitment?
I'll give some mathematics behind it. A IT company having a resource in Bangalore, in EGL, a seat with a particular premise, with having a desk, fan, lighting, software plug point, network connectivity, internet usage, plus blah 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 blah, cost around 6,000 rupees per month. Okay, mathematics. Okay, so which means if I got a building with 10 floors and a capacity of 12,000 people in that, which means I still am paying that money. Okay, right now I'm paying that money, whether I need it or not, that's secondary. Okay, IBM was the first to invent the work from home almost 10 years back or 15 years back, but we have a policy to register ourselves in that. So our IT part has not been impacted because we don't see a change. I work from home most of the times or from various things. So the cultural point of view, from a shift point of view, some IT organizations, when we say work from home, they are feeling relaxed. They're able to give a lot of productivity. They're able to give a lot of things to that. And now organizations are thinking whether it's right or wrong from a long-term point of view. IBM has already gone into the phase where they say that it is right or wrong. This is an option available, and people don't misuse that options in the best sense as IBM. The cost part of it is going to be a challenge because these organizations cannot shut down their offices, cannot do that, because most of the contracts, when they engage with them, they look for a physical location as their kind of an entity. What is your base as that part, which means they still have to put that particular contract clause whether you are available physically or not, which means that 6,000 rupees, which is a cost, has to go into somebody's pocket, which I don't get a benefit out of it, which means if not 6,000, maybe a 4,000 part of it. Maybe the network part, I will make it, instead of it was a 198 bandwidth, 198 gigabits was my bandwidth, I reduced it to 120 because there are no resources for using the part. So I may reduce that particular bandwidth for that particular point. I may reduce from 6,000 to 4,000 in a monthly part, but you cannot reduce the chair or the particular thing. So the cost of business or this will not drastically change, and this will not give the economies to the organizations where they say that I've reduced 10% population or 20% population by reducing their seats or other things in the part. That's my view.
Just a flip side to this. So I've been working with IBM and now with Dell. So I completely agree with what Venu said. So if you are part of the global business services or you're part of the services wing, this is perfectly what Venu said. But then if you're working on the R&D side of it, where you don't have to have any customers coming or visiting your office or building or site, that means that you could actually have that office completely being shut. And if at all you need, you could have some robo offices put together, or you could have some floating cubicles put together just to take care of some or mitigate certain aspects where people are wanting to come to office for certain reasons. But then if you look at both aspects of how a services wing versus a product wing would work, then it's completely fine for a product wing to be completely shut off and just have maybe robo offices and the forces working outside of from a remote location.
Thank you, Hemant sir.
Just to add there, want to add here the model of the hiring, right? So again, as I said, like it depends on the company to company. Uh, so it's one way look at economics, but broadly, I would say it is driven by the need of the company. And one of the models that probably would flourish given the remote working is going to be freelancing models. So if you look at freelancer.com or fiverr.com, a lot of people, we engage them on a short-term engagement and like they move on. So I would say probably people will also look at something like that eventually, like just to make sure that they're engaged in case if there is a gap or if they don't want to be associated with any company for a longer term. That could be one model I could see. And the second element is there could be shift in terms of the salary structures and the payment. So this is another thing that could happen, is what I envision.
One adding
Yeah,
point
so
which was part of
will your saving because of the work from home is going to help increasing the recruitment itself, right? We have to understand one thing: it is a cost factor, but recruitment is always driven by the demand, the global demand. And if it is a services company, the economic situation across the world, or if it's a product company, the demand for a specific product, that is going to drive the need for hiring. Whereas the cost factor, I mean, work from home and infrastructural requirements which are linked to these factors of whether you work in office or whether you come for meetings or whether you work from home. And remember, there are also industries where you have laboratories to be involved with, especially companies like Nokia, if it's communications, and you can't do things completely remotely as well, and you will have to keep them running. Though the percentage of work from home, I think, would significantly vary. That will only help us to control the cost levers. For good or for better, that depends on the ratio you're able to adapt to. But the hiring part, there is a recruitment part, or the job opportunities part, is going to be driven mainly by the demand. So I think that's a different view I have, that probably it's not really linked directly.
one item I want to make. This was the first question which was given to Murali. This work from home part from a policies and controls. Most organizations who are giving us business to take this particular software as a service or a platform as a service or the research part, let's understand this: the security and the compliance of the data and customers are the most critical item, which is there maintained by having different tier zone where you cannot take your laptops or your mobile phones or everything else. Today in IBM, at least my laptop, at least that way, I do not have a drive which can do a write onto this thing. I cannot download anything from anywhere to any external drives there. I cannot do print screen of this particular screen which I do, which means the softwares and the utilities of this particular product which will be offered, if you're using a guest Wi-Fi network or using a Wi-Fi part of it, then you will be able to access only the internet which has got your things. But if you are to connect with a VPN of a customer, which is the IBM or the IT company given that particular part, you cannot access your guest Wi-Fi or the other part, which means your screen is logged into that part to access only that, where it's called the VDI kind of a thing, where you access through your screen with that. If you disconnect, and it takes care of all those images where you say that this person during this time, from this time to this time, was able to do that. If you try to send an email from that particular Outlook to anything else, it is a control of data security, privacy, it is taken care. So which means IT companies have got a software and a hardware method to control a data privacy or a kind of a control if in case you have to leverage a work from home practice for any practitioner, which means leaving away the cost model, leaving away whether the person is productive or not, just to give a factor whether the industries are banking, saying that my data and whatever work is being done on a software by various things are controlled from a data masking or from a control of hardware, be taking a print screen or control. All those products are available in market. It's just time that whosoever is the vendor who has got into some of those companies, they will be flourishing in some point of time, because they will get huge orders for delivering those capabilities to them. So Symantec or McAfee or Big IP and everything, they will flourish in due course of time. If this lockdown goes from 2 to another 1 year, all the IT companies, all the work from home practices, all the customer nuances of those technologies, as Puni and Harshad mentioned that about their need to have work from home, it doesn't impact their business model from a cost or perspective. They will all will be able to deliver using those kind of hardware, and they are risk free from an organization point of view.
Thanks a lot, everyone. By this, we come to the end of today's session. I'd like to express my appreciation and gratitude to all the panelists who made time from their busy schedules to share their views on how COVID-19 will affect jobs and employments across India. It was a very informative session. Thank you for being here. And I'd also like to thank all the attendees and organizers. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you all
connecting.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Have a nice day.